Hello and what is up, YouTube? My name is G3Iron and welcome to today's rant. This really isn't a discussion. This is me telling a bunch of grouchy, grumpy people that I'm just as grouchy and grumpy as they are and they should get off my lawn. In this case, my lawn is proverbial and getting off means stop complaining and get means a life. Man, they're going to need to bring back the YouTube dislike button for this video. Yeah, I'm going to go after some people here. So if this video in any way, shape, or form gets you in the feels or makes you feel like you need to angrily type something out on your keyboard, feel free to blast me back, as it were, and tell me to get off your lawn, because I'm going to be sharing some of the things that I'm thinking about how people are responding and reacting to patch notes and the entire hype cycle for the upcoming 320 Forbidden Sanctum League. Today, my thesis is very simple. If you are always upset during patch announcements, you may not be enjoying Path of Exile anymore. That's it. It's really that simple. When patch notes come out, when trailers come out, when you hear Chris's beautiful, gorgeous, gleaming voice come over your loudspeakers, through your headsets, and penetrate those thin layers known as eardrums in your head, if you don't hear that and get excited when he says, "Hello, my name is Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games," well, maybe you're just not that excited to be playing Path of Exile anymore, okay? Maybe it's just as simple as that. All right, so there's my rant. Now, I'm going to give some reasons and some background and some evidences and some prescriptions, but that's pretty much my rant. I really don't enjoy interacting with or engaging with a whole bunch of folks that are just going to complain about a game that they're still playing. If you don't enjoy playing Path of Exile anymore, well, anyway, we'll get to that later on when we get to my conclusions. If all you see in Path of Exile is flaws, like trailer comes out and you go, "Oh, those skills look terrible," or "Oh, this means nerfs," or "Oh, my builds are now ruined," or "Oh, my fun for the next 3 months is now gone," or "Oh, somebody personally has it out for me," well, then you need to start asking yourself, like, if this happens every single patch, am I having fun playing this game? Like, when I log in, do I get excited? Am I at the end of my day or the start of my day or the middle of my day? Whenever it is that you're allowed to play Path of Exile, whenever you've got time to sit down and go, yes, this is gaming time. This is not boss time. This is not reports time. This is not school time. This is not other obligations time. This is time to game. And you sit down and you boot up Path of Exile and you hear those grinding gears moving through your speakers and penetrating your brain sound receptors. When you hear those, if you're not going, "Yeah, I'm excited," if you're just going, "Oh, this game," then it's completely valid for you to ask yourself, am I having fun playing this game? A second question to ask yourself if you're always upset about patch notes and trailers and hype cycles and new information about the game that so many people love, including you probably at one point. Another question is, what about the announced patch notes? What about the announced changes? What about the announced new content is so threatening to my plans for the upcoming league? Like, what did you already have established? What expectations did you already have set for what you were going to do in the next 3-month league that now the hardworking employees and the team at Grinding Gear Games that have worked hard to come up with new content for you to enjoy in a free-to-play fashion, what is it that they've done that now ruins your expectations? Like, what were you expecting that now that you're getting something different, you're going, "Oh, this is terrible, and I'm leaving. This is bad." Blech. If that's the spot that you're in, if every time a trailer comes out, if every time a hype tease comes out, if every time something is posted on Twitter and all you can do is just go, "Oh, that's not that good," or "Oh, it doesn't compare to this," or "Oh, well, what about my build?" Okay, just take a step back, look at your own expectations for the game, and take a step back and look at your own enjoyment of the game. Those are the two things to diagnose: your expectations and your enjoyment. If you are always upset during patch announcements and league announcements, you may not be enjoying PoE anymore. You might need to either take a step back and then come back to it and fall in love with it again, as I've done in the past, or you might just need to figure out what is it that you enjoy about Path of Exile and really dive hard into that. So, therefore, my conclusion is quit moaning or quit playing. Feedback is really, really helpful. Crying is not. Right? Crying says there's pain here, but it doesn't allow someone else to know where the pain is. I've got a house full of kids. I've got a lot of them. I've got 4 of them that are still alive. I've got an 11-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And when they're crying, it is absolutely essential for them to be able to communicate to me what hurts. Did you stub your toe? Did someone say something mean to you? Did your sister throw a piece of ice that you were sucking on across the room into the garbage can because she felt like it? Not that that's an exact scenario that's happened in my household recently. Feedback is helpful. Crying in and of itself tells and exposes hurt, but it doesn't tell you what to do with it. Once somebody's hurt, we say to our kids, me and Mrs. Draconis, hey, what's hurt? What happened? Can you tell me what's going on? Then we know, hey, we need to get an ice pack or a veggie pack or whatever and apply it to a head or to a leg or to an arm or maybe just a hug, or maybe we need to work out a dispute and a disagreement, right? It's that simple. Crying says there's pain, but feedback says, what do we need to do with that pain, right? So if you're upset every single time a new patch comes out, every single time a new trailer is released, every single time you hear Chris's glorious voice, you go, I can't believe they're doing this to my favorite game. Evaluate your expectations and figure out what you're enjoying or what you were hoping to enjoy that you fear is now about to be ruined. Let's take a look at some examples. I've removed names from people so that way, obvious anonymity as best as we can give. So here's some examples. Problem: we nerfed more than we buffed. Solution: use the problem solution format they hate. I miss the old patch notes with only reading buffs and nerfs without someone trying to convince you it's good. Just in case anybody doesn't remember, back in the day, we used to only have patch notes that would not explain the thought process behind that. Grinding Gear Games specifically developed that format of communication with us as a community because we as a community wanted more interaction and more explanation from the developers. It is extra work for the developers to develop the patch notes in a way that they are communicating to the community. This is why we are doing something. It's a heck of a lot easier just to say, hey, we're changing, the number of projectiles on Lightning Strike. It's a lot easier just to say, Lightning Strike now only has 2 projectiles instead of up to 7. Single sentence, easy, concise, done. But instead, what Grinding Gear Games does now, during their current communication cycle and their current communication philosophy, is they let us know, hey, here's some of our reasoning behind why we're making the changes that we are making. This one particular person is not happy with the way things are being communicated right now. Another example, I really just want you to know what drugs are y'all on to think this is good. I've seen better balance in Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! Than this. This may mark my 6th league. And I find this abhorrent and insulting to a majority of your player base that obviously the vision does not give any care about. Gonna save my money for D4. So disappointing that such a long-running game title is being ran this way. Somebody follows up this quote, exactly, really don't know why some players are so hyped. XD. Imagine the second cheapest support pack have like the same price as the whole of D4 XD. Easy choice here. I'm not sure if Blizzard employees just have so much time on their hands that they're posting on the Path of Exile forums. That's kind of funny, the way how that's phrased, though. It does kind of come off just like, because PoE's so bad, go play Diablo 4. Yeah, I'm even saving my money for Diablo 4. Yeah, it's just, anyway, it's a very interesting tact to give feedback about. Other players are voicing their complaints in different ways, like on Reddit. Somebody said, recently asked questions, except for the most asked questions about buffing skills. They never address it, and it's been one of the most talked about topics the past 3 leagues. Don't know why I'm surprised every time. Wow. We're going to get to that. I've got answers for all of these things. We're going to get to them. I'm just making the case. There are definitely people who need to get off my lawn. Other comments here. Still nothing on buffing or reworking ascendancies and underused skills. Blech. It's not happening this league. It won't be changed. Just pray for 321. I really wish people would ask about the underused skill gems so we could know if they're dead forever or what. Yeah, just dead. There's just hundreds of skills you cannot play. They're actually inaccessible in Path of Exile. That's how dead they are. Yeah, no. Anyway, people have They are specifically choosing to not talk about it. They select the questions and answers to their liking. So many topics they just ignore. They also chose to dodge answering some questions in the process too. How rare are sanctified relics? Will I only see one throughout my playthrough of the league? As you start to master the sanctum at high levels, you'll accumulate more sanctified relics to pick between when trying to find the perfect one for your build. Literally doesn't answer the question at all. Okay. How the heck is somebody from the gaming design company, the game developing company, supposed to tell random internet person with no association to your account whatsoever? How the heck do you expect them to come out and give a specific answer to that question? Hey, what's the question? How many sanctified relics am I going to find throughout the playthrough? Like, they didn't dodge the question whatsoever. Are they supposed to tell you one? So if they answer one, there is a vast range in the player base of experience and of talent and of ability and of time as well. And so if they answer one, you're going to find one throughout your league. All right, then you've got people saying, oh, well, only the streamers are going to find them because they've got the most time on their hands. And so then you got casual people saying, no, we're never even going to see these. What the heck? Then what if you say 10, right? Does the casual player then say, oh, I'm going to find 10 throughout the league? Does the competitive player then say, oh, these are altogether too common. They're not even worth chasing after. What does this mean? Specifically, how do you give a numeric value to that, wrapping around and having in mind your entire player base? This is an excellent answer to the question, how rare are sanctified relics? Will I only see one throughout my playthrough of the league? The answer is, as you start to master the sanctum at high levels, right? So get to high levels, and until you get to high levels, they might not show up at all. They're actually pretty rare, maybe even at high levels. So get to high levels, and then you'll start to accumulate more sanctified relics. It's really, really simple. It's called reading comprehension and interacting with somebody who's communicating with you, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're actually trying to answer you rather than assuming that they've got some secret agenda. They want to keep it secret. We've got to keep it secret. Keep it safe. Yeah, we can't let the player base know that they're going to find between 1 to none to 100 to 0 to 1,000 to 25. We can't say that. We've got to keep it under wraps because otherwise the Illuminati will come find us and, I don't know, they'll make memes about us on Facebook or something. I don't understand. And it's okay. It's okay. People are hurting, right? And when people are hurting, a lot of the things that they say don't make sense. And so I get that. I'm empathetic to that. I am sympathetic to that because there have been things that Grinding Gear Games has done in Path of Exile that I have not enjoyed and that have hurt me. And so I've cried about those things, right? But again, crying doesn't allow for a solution. Feedback does. So don't just cry about something. Actually provide feedback. This does answer the question. Okay, let's go on to some more. Oh, this is a classic one. I've seen this literally for leagues, multiple leagues, this exact same sentiment, but here we go. So, you didn't go back a step with the 6-link recipe and kept the divine orbs as only drop. 2, you didn't go back a step with Magic Find and increased item quantity ratio to old league mechanics. 3, you didn't go back a step with Harvest to help on item progress and craft endgame items. Instead, you make a new currency which can't be used on many items. What was the point of that? 4th, you have not reversed the most harmful aspects of Arch Nemesis. It seems that you have not understood the problem with Arch Nemesis. You made mandatory to have a Magic Find color party member and you forced people to pay for a color. Now we still have to carry a Magic Find color because this is the same system as 319, but now it's hidden. So yeah, 320 born as a death league to me. It was a pleasure playing from beta to 319. Good luck for everyone. I gotta say, if this is genuinely this person's last league, you know, I hope that they've enjoyed Path of Exile with everything. If you stop having fun with the game, if you cease enjoying the game, if it's not meeting your expectations for your hobby time, by all means, move on and find another game that does, right? It's your hobby time. Don't let me, no matter how gloriously balding I am, or anybody else, and however much hair they have or don't have, tell you about how to spend your gaming time, right? That's up to you. That being said, let's just realize for just a second that the 6-link recipe and divine orbs, that swap has been around, and no, Grinding Gear Games does not have a history of reversing major crafting decisions that they've made. There's no history of that. This is not a betrayal of who Grinding Gear Games is. This is a continuation of who they are. They make decisions, they double down on them, They sometimes explain them, which is what they're trying to do with the current communication strategy that they've got. And then they move forward and they continue to release new content. Secondly, you didn't go back with the Magic Find increased item quantity ratio to the old League mechanics. No, they don't go back. They're trying to make PoE 2 and they're trying to bring PoE 1 more in line with what they're aiming with for PoE 2. If you haven't been around for very long, which this person claims to have been around since beta, you know that PoE 2 is on the horizon, and a bunch of the work that's going on at Grinding Gear Games right now is focused on PoE 2 and making PoE 1 so that way it's not some sort of discombobulated game where the experience is jarring to go from PoE 1 to PoE 2. They need to make these things harmonize and line up together, and so changes are coming to do that. Thirdly, you didn't go back a step with Harvest. Okay, Harvest was, I think I'm getting my dates right. Harvest was, I believe, 2020. It is now the end of 2022. If you are expecting for Grinding Gear Games to go back, what would that be, like 11 patch cycles? What was Harvest? Was Harvest 3.6 or 3.7 or 3.11? 3.11. I just was looking at the old patch notes. It's 3.11. It's 3.11. So are you expecting, it's 3.20 now, you're expecting GGG to go back 9 patch notes, right? 9 major patch cycles and go, you know what? We really need to reevaluate that entire league. That's what you're expecting them to do right now. You're expecting them to take time and development and energy and take members of the way from the team away from what they're working on to provide new content, both for PoE 2 and for current leagues that we're receiving. And you expect them to go back and revisit things from 9 patches ago. Just realize that's the argument presented here. 4, I have not experienced Arch Nemesis. I've not played it to any extensive length, and so I really don't have much comment on here because I can't say whether or not GGG has or has not properly dealt with and encapsulated Arch Nemesis. What I can do is I can comment on a lot of the community and the feedback from the patch notes, and the vast majority of folks are saying, hey, we think that rares and how they feel and what they're going to be like in terms of challenge and how long it takes to kill them, that's going to be the very watchword. That's going to be the pinnacle tipping moment for experiencing whether or not 320 is going to be a success or not. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of players. When they go in and they fight a rare monster, is it going to die or is it going to take them forever to kill those rare monsters? And that's going to be their metric for a lot of players that I'm chatting with and that I'm watching. That's going to be their metric over whether or not the changes to Arch Nemesis are successful or not. It's going to be how good does it feel to fight, to interact with, and to take down rares in 320, and none of us can answer that until 320. Next up, a couple more of these comments. Such a burden, oh my. So glad they fixed the thing everyone was complaining about, predictable quest rewards, and not something as unimportant as crafting or buffing the 80% of terrible skills, /sarcasm. I really do wonder if people do the research themselves, like 80% of terrible skills, how many skills in the game are really terrible, like are just absolutely unplayable? Because whenever players make that statement, you can probably go and find somebody who's playing with a skill that is an absolutely awesome build, taking on endgame content with it. The next comment, there really weren't any good buffs. LOL. A couple of the uniques are usable. 20 to 30% additional elemental resistances shred on pinnacle bosses if you use those curses. 15% additional action speed slow on pinnacle bosses if you use temp chains. Everyone is naturally buffed by the fact that Arch Nemesis was nerfed. Actual meaningful buffs? Zilch, zip, nada. Actual meaningful buffs and changes to skills or gameplay? Not really. The Frozen Legion skill looks like it would be really fun to level with, so that's something. Revealed Vol skills seem awful. Hype train is completely off the tracks. Looks like this is a throwaway league before the big yearly expansion. 8 uniques plus remaining Vol skills left to be revealed that could save the league. Okay, I just have to laugh. Okay, sometimes you just have to sit back and read through somebody's stuff. And I love it because like 2 comments later, this is what somebody said. This is perfect. It really is. It's beautiful. This is a response from somebody to this post. First paragraph. Here's a couple of meaningful buffs they did. Second paragraph. There weren't any meaningful buffs. Third paragraph. I don't actually know what I'm upset about, but I'm upset. Okay, it goes back to the crying about something doesn't. It communicates that you're hurt. It doesn't say what to do with it, though, right? So what were your expectations coming into these patch notes? Were people expecting Grinding Gear Games were people expecting Ziggy D and Chris Wilson to get on there with the trailer and the Q&A, and Ziggy to say, Chris, do you guys personally take responsibility for Arch Nemesis, that it hurt the player base and it caused people in their feels to be absolutely beside themselves for the entire patch? And then Chris to say, yes, I do. We take personal responsibility. Not even we. I take personal responsibility, and I'm going to double down on things to make sure that never happens. Because, by the way, guys, whenever Grinding Gear Games does that, takes responsibility and apologizes for things and then doubles down on making things work better, they actually do those things, and we can track that. We can see that in some of the big changes and some of the big, more scandalous, I'm using air quotes there, scandalous things that have happened over the years with Grinding Gear Games where they've had to come out and apologize. And then they have gone through and worked out some of those issues and done a much better job of improving those issues in the future. And then, by the way, there's always a crowd whenever GGG does apologize and take responsibility in that fashion. There is always a crowd that goes, oh, why are you apologizing? Stop wasting time apologizing and just fix all this stuff. And by the way, haven't you fixed this? And why haven't you fixed that? And the list of things that people complain about just grows. This is why I love this particular response from this poster. First paragraph, here's a couple of meaningful buffs that they did. Second paragraph, there weren't any meaningful buffs. Like actual meaningful buffs, zip, zero, zilch, nada. There are buffs there. There's buffs. There's changes. There's going to be a difference both in the skill gems that are being played, as well as the ascendancies that are being picked, as well as the style of content that people are interacting with. Like, it is mind-boggling to see people and their supposedly logical functions at work as they are providing feedback when they're in the midst of pain. Really, that's all it is. They're in the midst of pain. I don't know why. I'm not sure what their expectations were for patch notes. If they've ever been around for patch notes before, these patch notes are basically pretty mild in terms of their nerf or shakeup. All right, so speaking of shakeup, we've got Group 1 that is over here doing their best Kermit impersonation. If I was to summarize all of these different positions and kind of the turmoil and kind of the discussion at the moment, it feels like, coming back into PoE after roughly a year break, it feels like Group 1 is saying, oh, GGG, we would like a meta shakeup, right? They would like some ascendancy changes. They would like some heavy buffing to certain skills in order to make a new league meta take shape, right? That's the theory. The folks in the Group 1 camp, I just want to say this. If you want a meta shakeup, which is easier to do? Is it easier to buff and test, as one poster put it, 80% of the skills which are unusable? Is it easier to test and buff 80% of your skills? Or is it easier from a design point of view to actually nerf and then balance around maybe 20% of the skills? I'm not saying those are actual legitimate numbers either, by the way, right? Either the 80% or the 20%. My point is there's supposedly a lot of gems that are just not usable. And the reality is, first off, that's not true. A lot of people can play a lot of content with a lot of the skill gems inside the game. So some people want a meta shakeup. That's what they want. And they're arguing for like maybe 80% of the gems that need to be buffed. And so the question really comes down to, how is it that you're going to achieve that, right? If the goal is meta shakeup, how are you going to achieve that? Is it easier to buff a whole bunch of skills, a big laundry list of skills over here, or is it easier just to nerf just a few more skills and then everything else looks more attractive? And Grinding Gear Games' history and pattern as a game design company has always been, let's nerf the smaller number of things in order to bring them back to the pack and make everything look supposedly equally bad, quote unquote, air quotes there. And then when everything looks bad, the players will actually test out different things and figure out what's actually really, really good. Somehow that happens every single patch cycle, by the way. Every single patch cycle, something that's supposedly awful just comes up as the most OP, meta, amazing thing ever. And right now, at this present point in time, it is seismic traps. Everybody all of a sudden is just, oh, seismic traps, we need a meta shakeup. When seismic traps do not occupy any percentage of any note of the actual player base's meta. It only occupies those who are competitive and who are in the racing stuff. And even a lot of them don't necessarily use that. So anyway, it's interesting. That's Group 1. Group 1, oh, we would like a meta shakeup, please. Group 2 says, we want an apology. Okay, they say there's not enough of the reversal from the old bad content, right? These are the people who want GGG to go back and revisit Harvest or other things, right? That's just one particular poster, but it encapsulates what a lot of people are screaming about at the moment. And those people just need to get off my lawn. Grinding Gear Games has never, ever displayed behavior where they go back and they revisit any league content that is older than a year and go, this is how we're going to reincorporate this and buff it into the league without saying, hey, we are explicitly reworking old leagues. And that comes as a part of patch notes and teasers. And it is a big, big process. They haven't done it since they've announced Path of Exile 2. Any changes that they have done have essentially been revisiting old content through new content, through new challenge leagues, through new particular abilities. This was a meme for a long time in the 2019 patch cycle, where essentially, basically, players were accusing Grinding Gear games of reusing stuff like, oh, this is Breach 2.0, or oh, this is just Strongboxes 2.0, or oh, this is just Tormented Ghosts 2.0. For a while, the accusation against Grinding Gear games was that they were reusing so many of their old reused ideas, or their previously used ideas, that things were getting old in and of themselves. GGG took a divergent path, and they essentially started making mini games inside Path of Exile, and those mini games had enough diversity to them, like Blight as a tower defense game, or like the 320 Forbidden Sanctum League that is coming in as a roguelike action game, or other such leagues that have come up with their own style of games, like even Harvest, where it's the farming simulator, right? There's lots of different gameplay ideas that GGG has brought in as they have tried to refresh and reinvent old content, even while repurposing old content. Again, the issue here is, what are your expectations coming into patch notes? Are your expectations that GGG is going to come in and apologize for the last 2 years that they haven't gone back and touched Harvest? Or anything else. And I say this to myself as well, by the way, because a lot of the time I'll be the first guy to say, oh, Synthesis, I long for thee, Synthesis, how I miss thee, Synthesis. But I say this a little bit for me as well, right? Synthesis ain't coming back, okay? So when I say that, when I'm joking about it, maybe I need to tell myself to get off my lawn. But I'm not crying about it and going out and saying, oh, I can't play this game anymore because Synthesis isn't coming back. Come on, let's just, there's a difference between making a joke and taking something too seriously and robbing yourself of fun. Come on, we're playing a video game. All right, group 3 says we want new content to be super unique and distinct. Make every single new gameplay just totally different from everything else, man. And if it's in any way, shape, or form interacting with old content, then that's not good enough. I mean, come on, we want a new patch. We don't want a rework of the last patch. This, by the way, shows you the 2 different groups that are at odds inside the PoE community between Group 2 and between Group 3. There is a group of players who for years have said, we would like a rework league. Don't give us any new content. Just go back and rework old content. Just do that for an entire league. We promise we'll play. And Grinding Gear Games has found out so many times, whenever they try and do something like that, the number of players who go back and revisit that old, re-envisioned, reinterpreted, reapplied content, it doesn't compare to the people who do come back just for the new stuff, right? One particular example of this is leveling through Delve. The Delve event, which goes on, I think it's gone on, 2 or 3 years now, where there's the alternative leveling thing and all you can do is interact with Delve. I've tried to make my case, hey, we all need to go play Delve during that event if we want to show Grinding Gear Games, look, we really want an alternative leveling experience to the 10-act story campaign. If you want to show GGG you're sick of the campaign, stop coming back and playing the campaign every 3 months and come back and play for 1 week, play in Delve and show them, look, we want an alternative leveling method. And not enough people come back to play it because people go, well, I don't want to play Delve. I don't want to play Delve. I want new content. Okay, well, if you want super new and super distinct content, guess what? You get it every single league. You get it 4 times a year where we get new challenge leagues. And by the way, that's just in one particular league format. You can play Path of Exile in Softcore Trade and Standard and Hardcore and Solo Self-Found. There's a whole bunch of varieties, and now with 320 Forbidden Sanctum League, you can even play it with Ruthless. So there's a number of different ways that you can experience Path of Exile to make content you've already experienced new and have a unique relationship with it. And then what you can always do is simply wait for the next patch, because there's going to be new and distinct content that is coming down the road. All right, the 4th and final group that I see as I'm summarizing and surveying the landscape with my balding and geriatric and failing eyes is a group that says, oh, we want underused skills to receive significant buffs. This is a little bit like the meta shakeup guy, but the meta shakeup group is different from this group. This group specifically probably has an expectation of, yes, I haven't played such and such skill in so long. Why is it that my favorite skill that I used to play isn't as strong as what it used to be? Why can't I do this? Why? And the reality is you can go play it. It's not necessarily going to be the same power level as what you previously experienced, but there's also a level of comparison here that players need to remember. Taking a build and going all the way to the end game in, let's say, 2016 is much, much different than the end game right now in 2022. Damage from enemies is different. Defenses for us as players is different. Damage from us as players is different. And defenses for enemies is different. A lot of the game has changed over the last 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years. In fact, the game changes every single patch. And so to say we want underused skills to receive significant buffs, it's a little bit of that same answer that we gave to Group 1. If you buff everything across the board, what that actually does is that sets us up for another, maybe even potentially multi-patch or multi-year cycle of patches where Grinding Gear Games is going to have to reel things back in order to get the game in a state where they feel like they can actually design things. There have been some really awesome uniques, some really interesting changes, and some really awesome content that's come out over the last several years of Path of Exile, and that's only come into the game after there has been significant changes, significant nerfs, and significant, we might even say, underused skills that did not receive buffs. Those things can only happen when Grinding Gear Games feels comfortable to be able to work on the environment that they've got, that the foundation is solid enough for them to make changes and they didn't accidentally just buff something way the heck to oblivion sky and us players are all going to go in and play it for a league. And then there's going to be backlash on that when GGG makes a mid-league nerf, which I don't think has happened for a while, and that brings out the hate train as well. That's like a whole other thing. So in order to make sure that a league is stable and that players don't have too much power, that there needs to be a reactionary nerf mid-league, GGG prefers to, again, nerf things and nerf a smaller group of things rather than buff a whole bunch of things across the board. All right, just for a moment, take a look at these. These are the patch notes dating back to 3.9 Metamorph League. The patch notes and their word count, including their expansions, you can see how things differ. I'm just going to go over the pages and the word count really quickly. Back in 3.9, there were 20 pages on a Google document. These are all on the same style of Google document, so I'm not fudging with any of the margins or anything like that. 20 pages, a little over 8,000 words on the patch. 3.10, 24 pages, 10,000 words. 3.11, Harvest, 26 pages, 11,000 words. 3.12, Heist, 19 pages, 8,000 words. 3.13, Ritual, 36 pages, 12,000 words, and that included an expansion. 3.14, Ultimatum, 33 pages, 12,000 words. 3.15, Expedition, 48 pages, 16,000 words in the patch notes. 3.16, Scourge, 85 pages, 31,000 words. 3.17, Arch Nemesis, 47 pages, 18,000 words. 3.18, Sentinel, 11 pages, 4,000 words. 3.19 Calandra, 61 pages, 24,000 words, and 3.20 Sanctum, 35 pages, 13,000 words. If you take a look at this and you just see and notice, hey, Grinding Gear Games is communicating different things in their patch notes, but here's the consistent thing in all of it. There's a whole bunch that they've got to communicate to us as players. A whole bunch, thousands of words worth of nerfs and buffs and explanations. I'm bringing back the video so I can just look you dead eye or dead webcam vision in the face. I don't know. Look me in the eye or don't. Roll over and fall asleep. If you have the expectation when you are reading patch notes, oh, these are just going to be nothing but flowers and excited times and buffs and new skill gems and, oh, that favorite gem of mine that hasn't been around for a while, that I haven't played in a long time, that I actually haven't tested with all the new available tools that have come out over the last several patches to see if it's playable. That's going to get a flat buff of 70% to damage, and now we'll finally be able to go play it in endgame. Woohoo! Like, what game are you interacting with? What patch notes are you reading? What company do you think has taken over at Grinding Gear Games? What new designers and philosophers and communication directors do you think are working there that all of a sudden have said, yes, everything that we've ever done before is a mistake and we're going to do it completely opposite from here on out? If you're looking at these page counts and these word counts and you're going, wow, that does kind of look like a lot, actually. They really do explain themselves and there's probably some reasoning behind all this stuff. And you're saying, gee, that is kind of weird that people come into each new patch cycle and each new trailer and go, what the heck? Why is GGG destroying the game? Maybe actually the people who are claiming that GGG is destroying the game, maybe they're just kind of at the moment not enjoying their Path of Exile experience, and maybe their expectations are a little bit different than where the game is headed. So, what does grinding gear games normally do? Having taken a look at thousands upon thousands upon thousands of words and been covering patch notes and patch cycles since, well, I was going to say since many of you before you were born, but that's just not true. Since many of you have played the game. What does GGG normally do? Two things, okay? When new content enters the game, they do one thing, and when new content goes core, they do another thing. First off, when new content enters the game, they say, you, as a new player, you get new player power, right? That's what the new content is. It introduces new currency, new unique items, new passives, new ascendancies, new reworks, new skill gems with new interactions. All of these things are player power introduced that allow players, regardless of where you're at, regardless of what specific build you pick, new access to power. New content, new levels of player power. That's what GGG does. Then when that new content goes core, GGG goes, you know what? That new stuff that we just brought into the game, we actually got to nerf it because now we've got a bunch of data that says, you know what? This is a little bit too far out of rhythm. This is a little bit too far pushing beyond the bounds of what we were hoping for. And so what do? Whenever something goes core, you get a nerf, you get a nerf, you get a nerf, you get a nerf. That's what a patch cycle is for GGG. In fact, I can already make some predictions for 321 right now. Stuff that's OP, determined to be OP, and that's way out of line from 320 release, probably going to get reined in a little bit in 321. This right here is a neat little Ascendancy chart that just shows you from Abyss League all the way up through Blight League. These are official stats posted, and they're resourced by Grinding Gear Games official forum postings, okay? These are official stats on Ascendancies that got played between Abyss all the way up through Blight League, all right? Betrayal was 3.5, Synthesis 3.6, Legion 3.7, so all the way up through 3.8, all right? During Abyss League, during Bestiary League, during Incursion League, Delve, etc., you see that the Ascendancies change. Assuming this, maybe this is a big assumption, but assuming that skill choices also change when Ascendancies change, which is very verifiable and true. You can just go look it up, whether that's on the most recent Path of Exile PoE Ninja boards or the last league's PoE Ninja boards. Ascendancies don't always marry themselves to one or two skills, but they oftentimes do. And so if there's a change in an Ascendancy's popularity, it often means that there's also a change in a particular skill gem or an entire archetype's availability and popularity. My point here is that Grinding Gear Games has given us multiple indications through patch notes, through a long track record of development and of interactions with us as a player community, as well as simply publicly stating things through patch notes and being available to answer questions through like the FAQ post and saying, look, this is where we think the game is at, and this is where we think the game needs to go, and here's the way how we're going to try and achieve that. GGG's given us years worth of data to say this is how they operate. They change things, they nerf things, they move things around. Slayer, the last time the Slayer was at the top spot was, at least on this, was Legion. He was up there at 36% at one point, and also in Abyss League. But guess what? Juggernaut was up there too at one point. Elementalist was up there for a while. Then Trickster. What about Necromancer? Assassin was in there. Inquisitor. My goodness, it's almost like things change on a league-to-league basis. And it's almost like, with the exception of the Elementalist, that one weird year where Elementalist got to survive every kind of nerf hammer and we were all freaking out about it. With that one exception in mind, most of the time, stuff gets smacked that is a large outlier, right, compared to everything else going on in the game. Stuff that is just massively played and massively popular by a huge percentage of the player base. That stuff generally gets smacked. And that's GGG's pattern. Patch notes used to be so heavy on the nerf side of things, they used to be called nerf notes. That's what we used to do when we were covering patch notes. We used to say, oh no, guys, patch notes are coming. Yeah, it's nerf day. Yeah, are you ready for the nerfs? That's what we used to talk about when we used to talk about patch notes. So when you come to patch notes or you come to a trailer or you are interacting with new hype stuff and the new hype train cycle, as it were, and you're going, oh man, they nerf stuff, you really shouldn't be shocked by it. It's what Grinding Gear Games does. And if you are shocked by it, then you're not paying attention. All right, just a real quick ongoing development 101 flowchart here. If you're going to create new content in a games as a service style of model, you need to produce content. So let's imagine here's a league. League A, that's what we're going to call it. It gets produced. Then it goes out. When it goes out, players interact with it, and you need to adjust it. So you adjust content A. You nerf it, right? Maybe there are things that are underperforming, and you might buff them. But in general, when you've already got other stuff to compare it to, generally speaking, it's going to come out as overpowered in order to incentivize players to interact with it, test it out, and then you nerf it after that. So after we adjust content A, We'll then move on to produce content B. Then we need to assimilate content B into content A, because content A sticks around in the ongoing game that is Path of Exile. Then we'll need to adjust content B and possibly content A again. Now that A and B are interacting with each other, we might actually need to reevaluate both of them. Then we're going to produce content C. Content C then goes core, and we need to assimilate that content into A and B as it's already been tested, nerfed, and interacted with. And then we need to adjust A and B potentially in order to account for C, and also probably nerf and adjust content C. You see the cycle, and it just keeps going and going and going for a games as a service model. Grinding Gear Games has done this with a high level of success for going on a decade. Anytime they release something new, it is incredibly difficult for them to actually come up with something new because they've already done so many things. But the fact that they keep coming up with something new and keep being able to integrate it to the game, still give us player power, but also not make things just go into the zoomy overpowered status, which sometimes that happens. But a lot of the times it doesn't. A lot of the times they nail it pretty good in terms of patch development, patch cycles, and player powers. They don't necessarily have to slam so many things as much as what they used to. I feel like there was a real learning curve probably about 3 or 4 years ago. This style of content production and game development means that there's always new content in the pipeline, and you're always trying to develop that new content with existing content in mind. It's really, really tricky, both for balance purposes, but it's also really, really tricky for player retention and for player growth purposes to acquire new players to come interact with your game. All this is to say, if you're complaining and you're not having fun in the game, is that because the game has changed so much beyond what you used to like and what you used to enjoy and what you used to expect? Or is it because of something else? Maybe your tastes and your motivations have changed over time. That's a possibility as well. There's a reason why games have a target demographic and why players in certain age demographics and financial demographics and other socioeconomic factors demographics. There's a reason why games target certain consumers and certain people inside a community and inside the gaming community at large. There's a reason why games have a target audience. So as I begin to ramp up my rant here about getting off my lawn, I want to clarify some things. There are some things that are complaining worthy, right? I've said get off my lawn. There's a whole bunch of things that are not worth complaining about. But what is worth complaining about? Well, first off, that would be a pretty long list. If we were to list all of the things that a gaming company could do that would be worthy of our complaints, we could all sit here, we couldn't all sit here in my office. My office is only probably big. Actually, that's a great question. Feel free to drop a comment below. How many people do you think can fit in the G3 headquarters office? I'm going to say over under, if we stack people, maybe we could get 20 of us in here. It's definitely going to be a fire code hazard. Anyway, it'd be a pretty long list of all of us sharing our stories of all of the different ways in which games have changed or games have essentially done something that is worthy of complaining. So rather than go through an exhaustive laundry list, I just want to give you some categories of things that are maybe worth complaining about inside a game space. First is when a gaming company fails to deliver on something that was explicitly promised or promoted. We've all got stories about this. Hey, you said you were doing such and such, but now you're doing such and such instead. Why are you doing that change? Or what's going on here? We expected A, but now you're doing B. You promised one thing, and now you're giving us no thing. What's going on there? That's a completely valid piece of feedback and a completely valid platform to begin complaining on. And so there's a lot of players, even some of the players who I've mentioned here today, who are expressing their hurt, who maybe with a little bit more refinement and with a little bit more time thinking through their own pain, as it were, about what they're frustrated with Path of Exile, might actually be able to explain with a bit more clarity what it is that they feel like Grinding Gear Games is doing where they're failing to deliver on something that was promised. Now, I've gone through and tried at length here today to demonstrate that Grinding Gear Games has a promised pattern demonstrating that what they bring to the table every couple of months with new content is change. That's what they do. They constantly change things in Path of Exile. And so what should you expect whenever you restart a brand new character in a brand new league where you don't have all of the currency that you've ever sat on? If you did, you'd be playing Standard. If you're playing in the new Challenge League, it means what should you expect? You should expect change. That's what you should expect. If Grinding Gear Games fails to deliver on that change every couple of months, I can understand why players would be upset about that. Whether that's not enough of a meta shakeup, whether that's too many of the same skills or ascendancies are at the top of the game, or maybe too many of the same crafting methods or same content are still the thing to do. Those, I think, could be valid complaints and valid pieces of feedback to provide GGG with in order for them to design in a more sharpened and focused and attuned way to what the community is experiencing. A second category to think about is when a company changes something that is a core part of your gameplay experience. A core part of your gameplay experience. Let's say, for instance, that Grinding Gear Games came out in the 357 patch cycle and said, we are taking away monsters from the game because monsters are no longer a part of the future vision of Path of Exile. You will no longer be killing monsters for them to drop loot or experience for your character. You and I would look at each other and go, what? Why are they doing this? By the way, gaming companies sometimes do this, where they build a game down one complete genre path and then they pivot to do something else. Sometimes they're very successful at it. By the way, just because a game has done this doesn't mean they won't be successful at it, but it's certainly a reason to complain about. When a game or a game development company changes its very core aspects of its gameplay experience. And I think a lot of players right now are feeling this and feel this tension in general whenever there are patch notes announced, but there's nothing to actually go in and play. There's a lot of tension going, wait a minute, I thought my gameplay was this, and here was my character, and this is what it was like, and this was my stash, and this was my crafts, and this is what I was working on, and this is what I was hoping to engage with. But now it's a new league, and there's going to be new content and a new character, and I'm not sure. I think a lot of the time what players feel, that angst in between leagues, is this. It's the tension between what they've experienced in the previous league and what they're uncertain about with the future league. That's not necessarily that Grinding Gear Games is changing something core to the gameplay. I think a lot of the time it's just the angst of the player base waiting, and sometimes even the excitement of the player base waiting for that next patch cycle to drop. A third category that is worthy of complaining about is when a gaming company changes the general financial, structure or shenanigans of a relationship between its community and its game. In other words, when a free-to-play game goes pay-to-play, or conversely, when a pay-to-play game goes free-to-play, or when there's maybe some other major changes within the microtransaction system. For instance, for a long time, we've all loved that Path of Exile is a supported game through player supporter packs. We've all enjoyed that, interacted with it. I think a whole bunch of us out there love the reality that Path of Exile is not necessarily a pay-to-win game. This is what I mean by pay-to-win at the moment. You literally can't go into Path of Exile and purchase, let's say, a drop from Shaper. You just can't do that. And that's a good thing. We all look at that. Well, I shouldn't say we all. There's a couple of people who disagree. But many of us as players and enjoyers and enthusiasts of Path of Exile say that's a good thing, that you can't just go in and pay your way to get new items inside the game. But what if a game does do that? If a game changes the core financial relationship between players and the game, that's something that is definitely worthy of complaining about and providing feedback about. And it's something that's come up multiple times over the years inside Path of Exile. For instance, whenever there's a discussion about an auction house or whenever there's a discussion about loot pets, those are discussions that essentially might be framed inside this category of a change in the way how the player community and the game are interacting in their financial relationship. So those are three categories that, at least for me, are worthy categories to complain and provide feedback to a game development company and say, look, we think you could sharpen this. We think you can meet our expectations in a better, in a better, finely tuned and more focused way that will allow me as a player to further engage and enjoy your game. Well, if I haven't said it enough today, a bunch of people are angry and they can get off my lawn. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed our discussion today. I've got some questions for you down below that you can, of course, fire back some answers to these questions. I'm sure the vast majority of you have already typed away and simply just been angry and are writing emails to YouTube corporate headquarters demanding that the dislike button is back. I wonder if this button or this video will be more disliked than when I took a shot at World of Warcraft. I would still think probably more people hated when I besmirched anything about World of Warcraft. But anyway, here are my three questions for you. What do you think of the current patch notes? Are you frustrated? Are you upset? Are you excited? Are you hyped? Are you just kind of bleh? Second question, am I way off base in my analysis today? Am I just way out of touch with reality? Am I just too geriatric for your tastes and I need to go sit with Nana in the home? Thirdly, which is better, cake or pie? Let me know down below in the comments, and I'd love to interact with each of you down below where you're going to prove me wrong, or maybe, just maybe, you might agree with every single thing that I said today. And in that case, I hope the upcoming 320 Forbidden Sanctum League is the league. A Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.